Hello there, you're watching Breaking News on NDTV. I'm Mahasiditi. The villagers are being armed quite literally with weapons. This in Jammu and Kashmir, as targeted attacks on the minority community have reached unsettling levels. To instill a sense of security among villagers of Jammu and Kashmir's Rajouri and Poonch, the Central Reserve Police Force, that's the CRPF, will train the village defence committees, groups armed by the government to defend against terror attacks. This comes as the new year in Jammu and Kashmir started on a tragic note. Targeted killings in Rajouri, killing 5 and then the death of 2 little children in an explosion the next morning jolted the residents and authorities alike. The Dangri village where the dastardly attacks took place was in fact peaceful for a long time. This area had last seen such bloodshed in 1999 when terrorists attacked a wedding procession, killing 8 members of the Hindu community in nearby Baljarala. The terror attack against the minority community in Jammu and Kashmir suddenly has spilled from the valley to Jammu. Even as the Kashmiri Pandit employees in the valley continue to demand being moved to Jammu for safety, is arming the civilians the answer to terror in Jammu and Kashmir? That's our discussion this evening on Breaking Views. Let me now go across to our guests who are joining us here on the discussion this evening. We are starting with Lieutenant General Satish Dua, a former Chief Integrated Defence Staff, MP Nathaniel, IGP retired CRPF, Ranbir Singh Pathania, spokesperson of the BJP, Imran Nabidar, spokesperson of the National Conference, and Amit Rana, spokesperson of Roots in Kashmir, Kashmiri Pandit. I'll first go across to MP Nathaniel. Sir, how do these groups work? They're being armed for self-defense, but the question is, shouldn't civilians be armed at all? Is that not the responsibility of the state to provide them a sense of safety?
Good evening to you.
Good evening,
for having me on your show. And as far as the arming of civilians is concerned, there is not something new that has been done now. This has been done in the northeast also, and it has been done in LWE infected areas also. And it is something which is done. In fact, earlier in Jammu itself, they had the civil village defense committees. They had been operating for quite some time. And when the situation normalized to some extent, it was almost disbanded. But now, because of these recent incidents where 7 were killed, it has necessitated the revival of these village defense guards, and they will be well trained because policemen cannot be there at every village, at every location. So obviously the only choice left with the government is to equip the village defense committees, arm them, and we have a number of ex-servicemen in all these villages. So they can definitely come forward and defend the villages and counter the terrorists also wherever they come about.
Okay.
In anti-Naxalite operations also we have had this.
Okay, all right. But Lieutenant General Dua, is the revival of village defense groups at such a large scale for the first time in over 2 decades, as we are discussing particularly in Rajouri, an admission that things are not looking good on the ground?
Not at all. This is nothing new, as Mr. Nathaniel said. And in the 90s also, when the situation had gone beyond a certain threshold, village defense committees were formed. Now, the army cannot be deployed on every foot or every meter of the LC. The security forces cannot be deployed in each and every village and hamlet. This is, in your earlier opening statement, you said, is this the answer? It is not the answer, Maha. However, we also need to instill a feeling of confidence and reassurance amongst the citizenry, amongst the villagers. So for that, we need to arm some people. And when I say some, like Mr. Nathaniel said, oh, there are several ex-servicemen, there are people who have licensed weapons by themselves, they know how to fire weapons. What this does does not root out terrorism, but it throws caution into terrorists. And I have operated there in the 90s and 2000s. Let us remember that those days we did not have mobile phones. Today, mobile phone is a great multiplier. If there is an attack or some lurking suspicion in one particular part of the village, with the mobile phone network, they will inform these people who are armed, and then the appropriate action can be taken. Even this time it happened. There was a man by the name of Balkrishnan or Bala. He fired shots. We all know that, and this mayhem could have been much more because he fired shots. It actually went in the air, but it stopped this thing. And the last point I would like to end by saying is arming people is one aspect. The essence is also at the larger level, at a higher level, to involve the civil society, make them the stakeholder. We must strengthen the civil society to take part in their own security. And also this will enable this intelligence agencies, it will enable the civil society themselves to throw up the bad hats amongst themselves. So I think all in all, it was wound up when it was not required, but all in all, it is a step in the positive direction.
All right. Ranbir Pathania, there's a deep sense of anger among residents, and especially after the New Year killings. More villages, as is being reported, are now registering for weapons training. Has the political class, the administration failed them, or is it really, as Lieutenant General Dua is pointing out, that the civilians also need to take ownership, and perhaps this is a step in that direction?
Maha, you have a two-pronged question which needs my answer. Firstly, if you kindly have a look at the statement of the government on the floor of the parliament, there is a considerable decrease. I don't say zero, there is a considerable decrease in the militancy and the militancy related incidents in Jammu and Kashmir. The security grid, NIA, SIA, and in liaison with other agencies, they have achieved considerable results. Now, the another aspect of the matter is that this is not a new subject, as General Dua has very rightly pointed out. In the late 90s, the entire Rajouri, Poonch, Doda, Udhampur, Rayasi, and virtually these VDCs had played a very, very pivotal role. This is as good as making the concept of self-defense as Atmanirbhar, giving them a sense of responsibility, sense of belonging towards protecting themselves, because these people, they have a better know-how of the routes, they have a better know-how of the movements in the area, they have better operations, they could manage better their security, they could come to rescue immediately at the first very instant. They could come till the army comes into picture, till the police comes into picture. So that intervening period, they can very aptly control of, as it has been pointed in the case of Dhangri also. When Mr. Mr. Balakrishnan, he fired some shots in the air, and which gave a feeling to the attacking militants that that army or police paramilitary, they were right. So this is a wonderful weapon. The new thing is that now the automated weapons are being given to those VDGs, and that's not a case that they will misuse and they will not come to learn it. They are only given to those ex-servicemen people, ex-policemen who already know how to operate them. So this is a wonderful concept, and particularly the concept of 303 rifles. These rifles are almost outdated in police. They were as good as debris in the police and we could say the army stores. And these 303 guns, each gun has a 1 round and then a 10 round magazine. This is a wonderful gun having a wonderful firing range, has a wonderful effective range. So this worked wonderfully. This has virtually improved the situation in Jammu and Kashmir, and I think this will add another feather in the cap of controlling the militancy operations in Jammu and Kashmir, give automated weapons to the people.
Let me go across to Amit Rana now. Amit Rana, we've heard our first 3 speakers there. I want to understand from you, why are villagers volunteering for arms training? Are they feeling let down by the administration, or do they actually want to assist the forces in the fight against terror?
See, first we need to understand that there's a difference of situation between the valley and the Jammu province. And we also need to learn from the history. Post exodus of Kashmiri pandits in the valley, and that in mid-90s, there was an attempt to force the exodus of the Hindu population from the so-called Pir Panchal range and the Chenab valley. And what stopped that exodus was the army going and creating village defense communities. So it helped the people to fight back the terror. One needs to understand that the terrain is difficult. Jammu and Kashmir is not plain. The terrain is difficult. There are villages which are in remote places. And I rightly, while I believe that it is responsibility of the state to protect its people, but given there will be limitations, there will always be disadvantages. So it is right to arm them. And this exactly 95 stopped the exodus of Hindus from Chenab Valley and from the Pir Panjal range. The village defense committees. So it was very foolish of someone, I would say a sense of overconfidence then that these village defense committees were disbanded. They should have continued to be there, and had they been there, probably we would have not seen incidents of massacres happening again in Kashmir. While the same may not be true in Kashmir because the population mix in the Kashmir province is different. You have only less than 1% of Hindu or non-Muslim population in Kashmir. So even if you arm them, the numbers are not in their favor and they cannot fight back. So in Jammu province, yes, the village defense committees will do fantastically well. They will save the lives of people. They will create a fear in the minds of terrorists. But it doesn't happen in Kashmir because the strategy of in Kashmir has changed. Okay. Now someone was mentioning, just give me 30 seconds. Someone was mentioning about the considerable decrease in terror attacks in Kashmir post 2019. Yes, there has been a considerable decrease in number of attacks, overall number of attacks in Kashmir Valley, but the number of attacks on civilian has gone up. The number of attacks and killings of minorities has also considerably gone up. So that also needs to be looked into and see how you are going to protect the minority in Kashmir Valley.
Absolutely, and that's exactly what we are discussing today, the attacks that have taken place on the minorities in Jammu and Kashmir. Imran Nabidar, who was responsible for this situation? The minorities were not safe in the valley. They are now not safe in Jammu side as well. The fabric, the ethos of Jammu and Kashmir is at stake once again. What are parties like NC, the Gupkar Alliance doing about this? Because this requires a concerted effort at the level of the society, not just by arming people with weapons, but by other means as well.
Before I answer this question, let me just put some facts here, because there are some facts which we need to understand first. When Article 370 was abrogated in 2019, the main reason, the justification that was given at that time by the BJP leadership was that Article 370 was responsible for promotion of militant activities, for promotion of terrorism. It was because of 370 that there have been these terror attacks in the valley and in other parts of the state. Now it is clearly now with the VDCs back and with the gentleman on the panel here also accepting, like Lieutenant Dua just said, that like the situation he's trying to make similarities of the situation that we are seeing in Rajouri right now with that of 90s in Kashmir. So clearly they have themselves accepted the situation has gone bad. So it was Article 370 had nothing to do with terror activities. Let us make that fact first clear, that 370 had nothing to do with it. Now coming back to your question, what our parties are doing, we have been saying this all along. If you remember when there was a minority killing in Kashmir, our president Dr. Farooq Abdullah Saab rang the LG and asked him to convene a meeting, immediately convene a meeting and bring all parties together so that we can all discuss the current situation. But there was no response. The problem with this setup is that they believe that whatever they are doing is perfect and they don't want anybody's advice and they don't seek anybody's advice. When they are not ready to talk and listen to us, how can you expect us to go to them? Now the situation has gone so bad. This particular area that we are talking about, Rajouri, it was declared militancy free a year ago, 2 or 3 years ago. Now we are talking about militancy in that area as well. And another aspect is, some days back, DGP of Jammu and Kashmir police made a statement and he said that Jammu province is completely militancy free. So obviously there is failure on their part.
All
there
right.
has been no.
Let's take a response then. Let's take a response from both Lieutenant General Dua as well as MP Nathaniel. Sir, first to you, Mr. Nathaniel. would you say what Imran Nabidar is pointing out there, that this is Rajouri we are talking about, which was relatively peaceful over the last many years? Should we say then that the situation has deteriorated and that is why there has been a need to revive these VDCs, sorry?
The very fact that there have been some killings in recent times, it shows that the situation is deteriorating, and that has necessitated the revival of these VDCs, and they are being now trained by the CRPF also, and I am sure with automatic weapons that they will be equipped with, it will be easy for them to tackle the terrorists who may venture into these villages. And moreover, it instills a sense of confidence among the villagers that they have some people to protect them around, and the terrorists can't have a free hand over there.
But sir, I want to understand from you, what is the command and authority when such a group is armed? What will be the level of accountability as well?
Of course, they'll have to be organized well. The J&K police is taking the initiative on this front, and I am sure once they are organized well, they'll have to work out their strategy as to how they deal with these fellows, and then have contingency plans also. So when they have these plans in place, they will be confident enough to take on these militants if they ever venture into these villages. It definitely has a deterrent effect for the terrorists when they know that the VDCs are active here.
Lieutenant General Dua, why I asked that question, sir, is that there are reports that suggest that each member will be equipped with .303 rifle, which has been mentioned by Ranbir Pathania as well, and 100 rounds of ammunition. The government is also planning to equip them with SLR rifles. I understand that this is not a normal situation that we are talking about or dealing with in Jammu and Kashmir, but how is equipping the VDCs with such arms or ammunition trying to even help revert to normal, sir?
Look, let me try and give you an example, Ma. If a thief is planning a robbery in a bungalow, he scopes out, he recce's 3 or 4 bungalows in a locality. There is one bungalow which has a watchdog, which has a security guard, which has CCTV cameras, and there is another one which does not have any of these. Which one will he go for? The point I'm trying to make here is that obviously the thief or the robbers will plan to go at the bungalow which does not have adequate security. Now, we've already established, all of us have spoken, more or less everyone has agreed that the army, the police, the security forces, CRPF and all what have you, cannot be there at every step or every square inch of the territory. So by arming some people, we are creating that fear in the mind of terrorists that this place is, even if before the security forces arrive, there will be some reaction. And like at the expense of repetition, this man Balakrishna, Bala as he is called, he actually did it in this Dangri incident. So here we've seen the thing happening. So the point I'm trying to make is that by arming them, you are not admitting that security forces are incapable, and this happens the world over. You are only increasing the level of reassurance amongst the villagers, amongst the citizens, amongst the communities.
Okay.
And so the point is, we need to understand it in correct perspective rather than split hair. Now, in the 90s, I have operated in 90s and early 2000. I have operated in Rajouri and Poonch areas. We've seen the level of violence those days was actually very high. Today, things have come down. So even the security forces numbers would be less. I will like to just end by 15 seconds by saying, today everyone is talking hoarse about security forces being less. But I will not name the political parties. Every political party, when they are not in power, ask for revocation of Armed Forces Special Powers Act from certain districts, saying that, oh, things are okay, now let's revoke the Armed Forces Special Powers Act. But the moment some incident takes place, then we see what happens. I'll end.
All right, I'll take a response from Mr. Imran Dhar on that, but before that, quickly to Amit Rana. Amit Rana, NDTV spoke with one 20-year-old Kashmiri pandit. He said he is not yet enrolled in a group in police records, but he's been carrying a .303 rifle that was allotted to his uncle earlier on. Then another person who's 66 years old now, he said that he will continue as a VDC member. Is this fear in the hearts of the people, young and old alike? Is this not a tragic situation we are dealing with? Do you feel arms can actually give a sense of security? And this is both on the philosophical level, unfortunately, as well as a realistic sense of security.
See, you have two questions. One is that isn't it a sad state of affairs? Yes, it is. Because if you look what has happened, especially in the Jammu region in past 1 year, we have seen considerable increase in acts of terrorism and attacks happening in the Jammu region, which was largely peaceful earlier. So this is not the first incident which has happened in Rajouri. Just 15 days back before this incident, there was a killing. Then we saw 2 consecutive attacks in August. We saw attacks in Jammu region. We saw attacks in army camp area. So, and just few days back before this incident, a day before, there was an encounter at Udhampur where 4 terrorists were killed. So there has been a considerable increase in number of terror activities in Jammu region. Now coming back to the second point of having guns, yes, it is unfortunate that people have to now carry guns to protect themselves. State has failed in protecting them. But you also need to look at it that this gun is now a deterrent for terrorists when they come to attack, because they now will understand and realize that there's a cost to pay the moment they attack a Hindu village or a Hindu household, because there will be retaliation. So if saving lives, if people's lives can be saved by training them in that, then let it be till an alternate or a better solution is found, or till government of Jammu and Kashmir and MHA realizes that they need to do more. But till then, there has to be something, a stopgap arrangement which protects these people. And I think VDCs, given their track record in the last 30 years, have done that quite successfully. So I think till they find a better solution, VDCs need to be there.
Okay. Imran Dar, Lieutenant General Dua just mentioned AFSPA, and there's also another question that I want to add to it, apart from what he raised. The NCs, during the National Conference's rule in Jammu and Kashmir, we saw that there were a lot of incidents of stone pelting. The BJP said that since its administration, their stone pelting has stopped. There have been accusations, counter-accusations on many other counts as well. Is politicization of a very, very sensitive area is the biggest stumbling block in taking any effective measures collectively in countering terror?
See, I will not call it politicization, but yes, there are issues that need to be taken in the right perspective. When we talk about AFSPA, there are certain reasons behind that why we advocated revocation of AFSPA from certain regions of the state. We don't want to be in a perpetual state of war. I mean, the responsibility lies with the government of India. If there has been a security failure, there has been a security breach in Rajouri. And unfortunately, no hard questions are being asked to the government. Why this security failure? Why this intelligence failure? Why didn't the police administration know that there has been movement of militants? Why were they what were they doing? Accountability, unfortunately, in this part of the world is missing. There is no accountability. I will give an example. When that incident happened, the next day there was an IED blast, and still there are no officer is being held responsible, because it was the responsibility of police administration to actually sanitize that area. That is a normal standard operating protocol that normally security forces follow, but unfortunately that was not followed in Rajouri, which led to the unfortunate death of 2 minors, and no questions are being asked. So we need to ask the government what they are doing. I mean, as a citizen, I would want AFSPA to go. I want to live a life like any other state of India. I have the right to ask that. I want our government to work towards to achieve that state where we should not be having AFSPA at all. But unfortunately...
But that is the irony of the situation, Imran Dar, that while calls have been made earlier and even now as you're making for the removal of AFSPA, we are seeing a situation where civilians have to be armed for self-protection. Ranbir Pathania, the allegation is that hard questions, as Imran Dar is saying, are not being asked of the administration. Why wasn't that area sanitized? Why, after the loss of 5 people, 2 children also had to die in the IED blast the next morning? Do you think that this is a time when all political parties need to be taken on board together to bring the situation in areas that were peaceful in Jammu and Kashmir back to where they were, rather than now create a sense of further panic and fear?
Maha, I was closely watching. You twice put a rider to the learned spokesperson from National Conference that whether there should be a political consensus on countering militancy or not. But he has evaded an answer to it. My very, very respectful submission, this is not a time to play politics over. I again stick to my stand that that terrorism in Jammu and Kashmir is on a dying note, is on a deteriorating note. Situation is not at all deteriorating. Terrorism has deteriorated in Jammu and Kashmir. And this is the frustration, this is the anxiety amongst the terrorist cadres and their masters sitting across the border, that these singular incidents, there have been some militants were trapped, some militants were successfully done to death in Kashmir and Jammu. We have been seeing this spate of successful incidents. So the other politicians at least need to be on the same page. There need to be a political consensus on it. There cannot be good terror or bad terror. And so far,
declaring victory before achieving it. That is the biggest problem right now in Kashmir.
And all that.
Amit Rana, I'll give you time, sir.
That point is being looked into. That point is being looked into from the top. There's a message. I think there's a program of the Union Home Minister also. He is going for an on-spot assessment at village Tangri, and he will take again a detailed security review. And this, if it is found, the lapse palpably, it looks as a lapse.
Okay, all right.
And if it is proved to be lapse, I am sure that
action will be taken.
But it will be fixed.
All right. I have the last 20 seconds left. Amit Rana, you wanted to make a point and then we'll wrap up this discussion.
The biggest problem in Kashmir right now is declaring victory before achieving it. The problem is government has gone and boosted so much that they cannot even take 2 steps backward to go back to the drawing board and re-strategize. And that is exactly the problem. So instead of claiming victory, instead of making statements which are not true, let's focus on the work in hand.
All right, we'll have to leave it at that. Completely run out of time, but many thanks to all 5 of our panelists for joining us here on this discussion this evening on a very difficult subject there. With that, we're taking a very quick break. News and updates will continue here on NDTV. Stay with us.